The broadcast ended with silence. Then came the screams. He stood there, frozen in front of the screen, the last message from Earth still echoing in the command deck. Around him, officers scrambled, shouted orders, and tried to make sense of what they'd just witnessed. But he didn't move. Couldn't. The words repeated in his head like a war drum. "We tried peace. Now you'll see humanity's wrath." And just like that, Earth was gone. He felt it, not just as a soldier, but as a son, as a brother, as a man who'd left behind everything he knew and loved on that blue planet, believing in the mission of peace, believing the Terran Council when they said diplomacy could work, that these alien coalitions weren't like the rest, that they wanted trade, not conquest, that humanity had a place in the stars. But that place had just been turned into glass. The Altharian strike was surgical, cold, efficient. Earth's defense satellites never had a chance. The orbital shields had been lowered in good faith, and the fleets were scattered across the quadrant, patrolling dead zones for phantom threats. It was a slaughter. Billions. Wiped out before most even knew what was happening. They didn't bomb cities. They incinerated continents. He gritted his teeth until his jaw ached. His name wasn't important, not anymore. Names belonged to the past, Earth's past. Now all that mattered was the mission, and the mission had changed. "Commander," a voice called out behind him. "Orders?" He turned. A young officer, barely old enough to shave, stood waiting, eyes wide, hands trembling at his sides. Behind him, the rest of the bridge crew had gone quiet. Everyone was watching, waiting. He didn't hesitate. "Seal this ship, ready all weapons. Every goddamn rail, nuke, laser array, full lockdown." The officer blinked. "But we're still inside coalition territory. I know exactly where we are." His voice was low, dangerous. "And I'm done pretending these bastards play fair." The crew moved fast. Fear can be a powerful motivator, but what moved them now wasn't just fear, it was fury. Earth wasn't just a planet, it was home. Mothers, sisters, kids, fathers, all gone in seconds. This wasn't just another skirmish, this was extermination. "Pull all files on Altharian fleet movements. I want every shipyard, every trade route, every embassy they've got marked for fire." "Commander," someone said quietly, "there's no official declaration of war yet." He stared at the man. "They declared it the second they turned Earth into a graveyard." Silence followed. No one argued again. He turned back to the viewport. Out there, past the stars, the same species that smiled during peace talks, that offered diplomatic gifts and signed trade deals with polished claws, had just proven what many had always suspected. They saw humanity as a threat. Not because of its weapons, not because of its technology, because of what it could become. Humans were adaptable, resilient, violent when pushed, but more than anything, unforgiving. And now, vengeance was all they had left. A comms officer raised his head. "Incoming message from the Coalition High Table. They're calling for immediate negotiations. Claim the strike on Earth was a rogue act." He laughed, a hard, broken sound. "Play it to the waste systems. That's where it belongs." There were no more illusions of justice, no more begging for a seat at someone else's table. Humanity didn't want their approval anymore. It wanted their blood. He looked down at the dog tags hanging around his neck, one set for his brother, one for his mother. Both of them gone now. Ash scattered across a dead sky. His voice dropped to a whisper, meant only for himself. "You wanted monsters? You should have let us stay human." And just like that, the war began. The first strike wouldn't be a warning shot. There would be no mercy, no treaties, no calls for restraint. Earth had tried peace. Now, they'd see what wrath really looked like. He didn't sleep that night. Not that he could have. even if the gravity field hummed at its usual comforting pace and the artificial lights dimmed to simulate night. The air inside the command deck felt like it was strangling him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw flashes of Earth. Not as it had been the last time he stood on its surface, but the way it looked in that last image. Continents burning, oceans boiling, the stratosphere shattering into flame. A quiet genocide. They didn't give Earth a warrior's death. There was no battle, no final stand, no chance to fight. It was an execution. He stared at the display feed of the known galaxy, lines of movement, blinking markers, cold data flowing down the screen. Useless now. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed. And he was at the center of it, whether he wanted to be or not. He had been a diplomat once, trained in languages, studied cultures. His job wasn't to shoot first, it was to understand. Make deals, keep peace. And look what that got them. He felt the shift in the ship's momentum as they dropped from faster-than-light travel. The stars snapped into view. 1 billion cold witnesses watching him navigate the aftermath of a planetary murder. Approaching Diraxis 4, his tactical officer said behind him. Altharian Fleet HQ, you sure about this? He didn't answer. Not yet. He stepped forward to the viewing panel as the deadliest symbol of alien pride came into view, a sprawl of metal and arrogance orbiting a lifeless gray moon. A command fortress, shielded, defended, proud. Once, they'd been allies. Once, humans had walked its corridors. Now he'd turn it into a grave. Load the Hellbreaker warheads, he said. Silence behind him. Shock. Then the scurry of motion. Sir, those were never sanctioned for use. I know what they are, he said, not turning around. I also know my mother lived in New Madrid. She didn't even know the sky was falling before she died. The silence deepened. Every man on that deck carried something now. A burned city, a lover's last call, a child they'd never see again. And sir, the officer said quietly, are we going public with this? He turned at that. The crew needed to see his face, see that he wasn't hiding behind grief, that he wasn't broken. No more whispers, he said. No more classified missions or silent retaliations. This is our response. The galaxy will watch us burn the ones who lit the match. The comms officer swallowed. Live feed? Wide spectrum. Open access. Let them all see what it looks like when humanity stops asking for mercy. He turned back to the viewport. The Diraxis fortress spun slowly in the void, unaware. They'd underestimated humans for centuries, mocked their early tech, smiled politely while fencing them in, and when humans finally reached the stars, all they wanted was a seat at the table, but instead, they were fed lies, treated like pets, managed like a disease, and then executed like vermin, no more. Launch all warheads, he ordered. No fanfare, no countdown, just fire. The Diraxis defense net lit up too late, sluggish and arrogant. It caught maybe 1 or 2 of the incoming missiles before the rest crashed into their shield grid like thunder. The Hellbreakers weren't just weapons. They were rage turned into science, a synthesis of plasma bursts, gravitic fractures, and molecular destabilizers. He watched in silence as the first wave hit. The fortress screamed across every frequency, not with words but in raw panic. You didn't talk when you realized the gods you mocked were real and furious. Shockwaves lit the moon's surface. Metal folded in on itself. Flame poured from ruptured hangars. Fighters scrambled but had nowhere to go. The whole structure bent inward, the vacuum consuming everything. Still he watched. Still he felt nothing. Only when the final explosion gutted the core reactor, a sun blooming in the dark, did he nod to the comms officer. End transmission. The silence afterward wasn't empty. It was holy, a requiem sung by fire and debris. He turned from the viewport and headed back to the war table. "We just committed an act of galactic war," his second-in-command said quietly. "No," he said. "We answered one." The others didn't argue. The ship, the Remnant's Vow, wasn't a carrier or a warship in the beginning. It had been diplomatic, equipped for peacekeeping. He remembered when they first walked its halls, humans and aliens both, debating tariffs and trade routes. Now those same halls were quiet. Every non-human ambassador had been jettisoned into the void 2 hours after Earth fell. Mercy had died with their planet. "Status report," he said. Tactical spoke first. "Fleet assets receiving signal. We've got independent ships pledging allegiance, a few Martian cruisers, some former outposts. Word's spreading." "Good," he said. "We won't win with politics. We win with numbers, chaos, relentless attacks. Hit them where it hurts, fast and loud." Logistics followed. "Supplies are thin. Most of our Earthside lines are gone. We'll have to start raiding." "We will," he said. "We take, just like they did." He sat at the war table, not to rest, but to plan. Maps unfolded, systems blinked, and for the first time in his life, he wasn't looking for diplomacy. He was hunting. That night, if you could call it night in space, he found himself staring at a small data chip. It was old, cracked, the kind you'd buy in a market back before Earth was ash. On it was a recording, his brother's last message. He hadn't listened to it since the attack. He pressed play. The voice was younger than he remembered. "Hey, I know you won't hear this for a while, not with your calm blackout schedule and all, but I just wanted to say, Mom misses you. So do I. We're proud, man. You always wanted to be the guy that helped people, made peace. But don't forget where you came from. Don't forget that we fight when it matters. You taught me that. Anyway, take care. Maybe next time you come home, we'll—" The message ended there. Static swallowed the rest. He sat in silence for a long time. Not a tear fell. Grief was a luxury he couldn't afford anymore. But rage was abundant. A quiet ping interrupted his thoughts. A private channel request. Untraceable, encrypted. He accepted. A face appeared, human, scarred, eyes cold. "Didn't think I'd hear from you," the man said. "Didn't think I'd need you," he replied. The other man grunted. "You just made half the galaxy soil themselves. The Diraxis hit was messy." "Good," he said. "I need mess." The man smirked. "Well, hell, if the Golden Boy's gone dark, maybe it's time we all stopped pretending peace is still on the table." He leaned forward. "I'm building something. Not an army. A reckoning. You in?" The man didn't hesitate. "I've been waiting for this day." The feed cut. He stood up and looked at his reflection in the viewport, barely recognizing the man looking back. This wasn't the diplomat. This wasn't the son. This wasn't the officer who believed peace would save them. This was something new, something forged in flame and betrayal. He walked to the main deck. "Set course for the Hallery Nebula. Their supply convoys run through it. We'll intercept, destroy, and leave one survivor to carry the message." Tactical nodded. "What message, Commander?" He didn't even blink. Humanity's not begging anymore. The Hallery Nebula was chaos wrapped in fog. Even before the war, most ships avoided it unless they had no other choice. Navigation systems got scrambled inside the dense plasma clouds, and solar storms flared like mood swings from a vengeful god. Smugglers, pirates, and scavengers called it home. Now, it was the first battleground in what would become the most personal war the galaxy had ever seen. The Remnant's Vow drifted like a ghost at the edge of the nebula, sensors running silent. On board, the tension simmered beneath every breath, every footstep. They weren't a military crew, not in the traditional sense. Most were former engineers, diplomats, freighter captains, and deserters. But loss had changed them. Grief was a better recruiter than any flag. He stood on the observation deck, watching the swirling blue clouds pulse outside like the last breath of a dying god. They were waiting for a Hilari convoy. Supplies, medical transports, communications fuel. The kind of lifeline you sever when you want a civilization to bleed. "Still nothing on long range," said Arlen, his tactical officer. "But we picked up a short-range ping. Could be a scout ship." He nodded. "Good. Let them spot us." Arlen frowned. "You want them to alert the rest of the convoy?" "I want them to think they have a chance." The vow had been modified in the past 6 days. Retrofitted, brutalized, weaponized. Civilian systems stripped for war, repurposed by men who had nothing left to lose. The ship had teeth now, and he intended to bite. He walked into the command deck, silent as always. No need for shouting here. Everyone was focused. Every man and woman on board was driven by the same thing: vengeance. "Status?" he asked. "Scout ship just made visual," said Arlen. "They've turned tail. Probably broadcasting coordinates." He nodded. "And now, 4 ships dropping out of FTL, heavy freighters, 2 escort corvettes." Perfect. He leaned over the control panel and tapped a few commands. The plasma fog thickened outside. It wasn't natural. They'd dropped cloud-seeding drones the moment they entered the nebula. Artificial interference, jamming frequencies, trapping prey. "Let them come in," he said. The others watched him. Even Arlen gave a half-worried glance, but no one disobeyed. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The ships entered formation. Standard escort pattern, 2 flanking corvettes with the freighters tucked between them. Cautious, predictable. He hated how much they still thought humans were predictable. "Now," he said quietly. The vow roared to life, its hidden cannons blasted out from beneath disguised panels. EMP bursts blanketed the freighter comms. Plasma charges fried the escort corvette on the left before it even knew it was under attack. The second corvette tried to pivot, but the debris from the first blocked its turn. In seconds, both were spinning wrecks. The freighters panicked. They tried to scatter. He didn't let them. The vow surged forward like a predator breaking the surface, spewing fire. It rammed the lead freighter broadside, slicing it open with forward blades meant for mining, now used for gutting. Screams crackled through intercepted comms. "Please, this is a civilian transport. We're not—" He cut the channel. He remembered Earth's last messages too well. Begging hadn't saved them. "Destroy the second freighter," he said. "Disable the third." The order was followed instantly. The second ship vanished into a white explosion. The third was dead in space, its engines shot out, hull scarred. They boarded it 5 minutes later. He led the strike team himself. He wasn't the kind of leader who sat back and pointed at screens. Not anymore. He needed to be inside it, to feel the weight of war on his boots, to see the fear in their eyes, and remind himself why this had to be done. The halls of the freighter were narrow and reeking of oil and fear. The crew were Hilari, long-limbed, gilled, with skin that shimmered like oil under light. They were a merchant species, proud of their neutrality, proud of their deals with Earth before the betrayal. He didn't care. They'd signed contracts with the Altharian coalition. They'd continued supplying them even after Earth fell. They profited off humanity's ashes. No one was neutral anymore. One of the crew tried to speak, his translator garbled and glitching. "Don't," he said flatly. He raised his weapon and fired. Not out of rage, out of message. There would be no deals now, no bartering, only reckoning. They took only one prisoner, the freighter captain. Pale, shaking, stuttering. What do you want?" the alien asked as he was shoved onto the floor of the Vow's command deck. He crouched in front of the creature. "I want you to go back and tell your masters something." He leaned in close. "Tell them we're not asking for peace. We tried that. Now we're coming for them. System by system, ship by ship. And when we're done," he stood up, "there won't be anything left to bury." He ordered the captain tossed into a pod and jettisoned back toward Coalition space, alive, bleeding, and terrified. That was the point. He turned to the others. "Burn the freighter." Some hesitated. "Sir, it's just a cargo hauler." He looked over his shoulder. Just once, and that was enough. The ship was incinerated 10 minutes later. He watched the flames drift through space like petals on black water. Later, in the quiet of his quarters, he stared at the list. It had been growing, name after name. Shipyards, governments, corporate syndicates, defense contractors. Every one of them had made credits off humanity's destruction. Every one of them had turned their back while Earth died. The list was long, but he had time. A soft knock came at the door. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Arlen stepped in anyway. "You know this isn't going to stop, right?" Arlen said quietly. "I don't want it to stop." Arlen hesitated. "Even if we burn the Coalition to the ground, Earth's still gone." He said nothing. Arlen took a breath. "They'll paint us as monsters, terrorists, mass murderers." "We are," he said coldly. "Now they get to see what they made." Arlen nodded. He didn't agree, not fully, but he understood. And that was enough. Before leaving, Arlen turned. "You've got a message, encrypted, from the surface of Gyros Station." Gyros. He hadn't heard that name in months. It was a fringe station, once a Terran outpost, later abandoned. A graveyard now, or so they thought. He activated the message. A woman's face flickered onto the screen. Worn, scarred, eyes hard. Human. "Commander, if you're seeing this, then you've declared war, and I'm not here to stop you." She leaned closer. "I'm here to join." The screen went dark. He didn't smile. But for the first time in days, he felt something shift. Humanity wasn't dead, not all of it. The spark had survived, scattered across ships, hiding in asteroid belts, buried in fringe stations, survivors, fighters, and now they were waking up. The message from Gyros Station was spreading like fire through dry leaves. Within hours of decoding the signal, 2 more independent fleets pinged their location to the Remnant's Vow. One was a Martian rebel flotilla, long thought lost. The other, a civilian freighter group turned pirate after watching the Altherian blockade cut off every exit from the Kuros system. Both fleets bore the same scars, the same rage, the same desperation, and both now flew under one banner: vengeance. He stood in the strategy chamber, a holographic projection of the galaxy spinning slowly before him. Every red marker blinked like an open wound. Every system they'd burned, every convoy they'd destroyed, every signal of retribution. More would come. Arlen paced behind him, arms crossed. "This is bigger than us now." He didn't turn. "It was always bigger than us." "No," Arlen said sharply. "Before, it was about revenge, justice. Now, we're building an army. And the galaxy needs to see what that army looks like when it remembers what it is." Arlen hesitated. "They're not all like the Altherian." He finally turned. "They were there, Arlen, at the summit, watching, listening. Not one of them stood when Earth called for help." The room went still. Arlen looked away, lips pressed tight. He didn't say it, but they both remembered that day. the transmission from Earth's surface during the first orbital strikes. The Terran ambassador's voice, shaking as he begged the coalition to send aid, activate the Mutual Defense Pact, do something. They did nothing, because Earth wasn't useful anymore. It had given what they wanted: minerals, labor, bodies for border patrols. And now it was just another inconvenient species to dispose of. Fine, let them see how inconvenient humans could be when cornered. "Bring up the gyros transmission again," he said. The screen flared. The woman's face returned. Rough features, one eye damaged, hair tied back like she had cut it with a combat knife. "My name is Thorn," she said. "If you're watching this, then you're not dead. Yet. That's a good start." He narrowed his eyes. The name rang a bell. Not military, not government. Underground. I used to smuggle medicine through coalition checkpoints until they raided our camps, called us insurgents, and burned half the colony. She took a breath. "I've got ships, I've got bodies, I've got tech they thought they buried with Earth." Her eyes bored into the screen. "You want a war? I've got one." The message ended. He tapped the console. "Send a response. Secure channel. Tell her I'm coming." Arlen blinked. "You're going to Gyros yourself?" "Yes." "You know that station's not stable. No law, no loyalty. That's where humans thrive." He left the chamber before anyone could argue. The trip to Gyros took 12 hours. He made it alone, in a stripped-down stealth runner nicknamed Scythe. No entourage, no fleet, just him, and the weight of Earth on his shoulders. He landed in the outer docks, rusted, scorched, barely holding atmosphere. Gyros was a skeleton of its old self. Broken rails. Lights that flickered like dying stars. The last time he'd been here, years ago, it was a research station turned refugee hub. Now, it was a nest for ghosts. The air reeked of plasma residue and unwashed bodies. As he stepped off the ship, 3 figures in scavenged armor approached. No insignias, no clear chain of command, just eyes that watched too closely. "You the commander?" the lead asked. He said nothing. That was answer enough. They walked him through tight halls, past half-functioning defense drones and patched-up bullet holes. Here, every face told the same story. Survivors, barely. Wounds that had never healed. People who had no side until someone gave them one. They reached a wide chamber lit by a ceiling panel that sparked with each heartbeat. Thorn stood in the center. She looked older in person. Or maybe just tired. "You didn't bring an army," she said. "You didn't either," he replied. They stood there for a moment, no weapons drawn, no guards intervening. Just 2 remnants of a broken race, staring at each other. "You really killed the Diraxis fleet?" she asked. "Yes." "You broadcast it live?" He nodded. She gave a faint smile. "Damn." She motioned to a battered table, scattered with maps and fragments of old coalition documents. "You want help? I want payback. That makes us allies." He sat. She didn't offer pleasantries. That wasn't how this worked anymore. "I've got 6 ships, all jury-rigged, 2 barely holding atmosphere. I've got engineers, former miners, maybe 24 ex-military types. No one follows orders." "Good," he said. "I don't give many." She raised a brow. "You're not what I expected." "I was a diplomat." She laughed. Dry and bitter. Hell of a career change. He glanced over the table. Gyros was a strategic nightmare, too close to several disputed trade routes, crawling with mercenaries, no reliable defenses. But it was also a symbol, a place the coalition had written off. Another reminder that humanity was meant to fade quietly. "You want to do more than survive," he said. "You want to make noise." "Surviving got us nowhere," she replied. "The galaxy ignored us when we were polite." He nodded. Then let's be loud. The raid on Solaris Depot came 3 days later. It was an outpost deep in neutral space, supposedly off-limits to all conflict, but everyone knew the Altherian used it to move fuel and weapons to their border patrols. They hid behind diplomacy, cloaked their shipments in humanitarian codes. He didn't care. The strike was fast. The Remnant's Vow dropped from orbit with the stealth fleet behind it. Thorne's ships emerged from the shadow of a nearby moon, engines roaring. The outpost tried to hail them, claimed neutrality, offered a diplomatic discussion. He gave one order: crush them. Thorne's crew planted explosives inside the depot's comm towers. The Vow opened fire on their shield grid, melting it to slag. Within 12 minutes, the station was burning. They took all the supplies, left the officers bound in emergency pods, unharmed but not unshaken. The message was clear. No more pretending. No more hiding behind technicalities. If you fed the Altherian, you were part of their war. They returned to Geiros with enough fuel to power a fleet for a month. And something more valuable: transmissions, encrypted logs. Proof that Solaris had been used to coordinate the Earth strike months before it happened. Thorne handed him the file personally. This isn't just about revenge anymore. He opened the file. Dozens of Altherian communiques, coalition signatures, plans, and there, buried inside, was something that stopped him cold. A name. Not one of the Altherian. Human. He reread it. Twice. 3 times. You recognize it? Thorne asked. He nodded slowly. Yes, he said. She was one of ours, one of the diplomats. Thorne narrowed her eyes. She helped them plan it? He couldn't speak. This wasn't just a betrayal from outside. Someone inside humanity's highest ranks had traded Earth's security for something. What? Power? Survival? He stared at the file, fingers clenched. I want her found, he said. And then? He looked up, voice steady. Then I'll show her what betrayal feels like. The datapad sat on the steel table like it was taunting him. A name. A face. A file filled with lies wrapped in clean formatting and bureaucratic language. Everything about it felt cold, mechanical, efficient, just like her. Her name was Admiral Ryan Calder. She had once represented Earth in the Terran diplomatic fleet. Praised for her negotiation skills, her poise under pressure, her loyalty to humanity. She'd stood beside him during the early days of coalition talks, back when Earth was still being promised peace and protection, back when they still believed the aliens wanted equals, not servants. She had known, not just about the betrayal. She'd helped orchestrate it. The proof was in the logs from the Solaris Depot raid, a dozen encrypted transmissions routed through ghost relays and masked hubs. But it was her authorization codes that gave Altherian ships the clearance to pass undetected into Terran space. She had made sure Earth's orbital defense grid was operating at only 40% the day of the attack. She'd sold out her planet. And now, she was still alive. Location: Norelian Prime, a neutral diplomatic hub deep in coalition-controlled space. According to the records, she now served as a liaison for post-war rebuilding efforts, a job that didn't require conscience, just survival. He stared at the datapad, every second weighing heavier. Thorne entered the war room without knocking. She didn't have to. Since the Geiros alliance, she'd become his shadow. Not out of loyalty, but shared understanding. They were both cut from the same scorched cloth now. Any doubts? She asked, nodding toward the pad. No, he said, voice flat. We go for her next. She folded her arms. You planning to kill her fast or slow? Neither. Thorne raised a brow. She gets a trial, he said, though the word felt foreign in his mouth. In front of every surviving human colony, Let them see her. Let them hear what she did. Thorn's eyes darkened. That's generous. It's not mercy, he replied. It's a lesson. The galaxy thinks humans are fractured, that we'll turn on each other. I want them to see what happens when we don't. She nodded. All right, I'll prep a team. The mission to Nerelian Prime was unlike anything they'd done before. No plasma storms, no orbital strikes. No roaring war cries across open channels. This would be infiltration, deception, precision. And it started with Commander Halden donning a uniform he hadn't worn in years, a Terran ambassador's formal attire, pressed and sealed with the insignia of a flag that no longer flew. The disguise would let him walk the halls of the station without raising alarms, at least for a while. The place still clung to the illusion of diplomacy. The Coalition, desperate to save face, had built it as a symbol of peace and order amid the spreading chaos. They still believed they could talk their way out of the war. Good. Let them believe it a little longer. He arrived under the call sign Envoy 7, flanked by Thorn and 2 others posing as aides. All of them wore badges declaring them as representatives of the Terran Restoration Delegation, a fictional group cobbled together using forged credentials, mimicked frequencies, and the kind of flawless tech only desperate survivors could engineer. They passed through 3 levels of security. No alarms, no questions. Humanity's face still fooled them. Inside, Nerelian Prime gleamed with polished white walls and serene ambient tones. Screens projected images of interspecies unity, propaganda loops about peace, harmony, and the future of coexistence. It made him want to vomit. Everywhere he looked, alien diplomats shuffled from meeting to meeting, oblivious to the genocide they had silently endorsed. There were no burnt skies here, no ash in the wind. Just deals, conferences, smiles. He forced himself to stay calm. The real target was on the top floor, a restricted section shielded for high command. Admiral Calder was there. Thorn leaned closer as they reached the lift. You sure you want to do this face to face? Yes, he whispered. She knew me. She smiled at me the day before Earth burned. Thorn nodded. Then let's take that smile away. They reached the top level without incident, a single door marked with the Coalition crest. Inside, a private chamber built for high-profile negotiations. Neutral ground, plush chairs, soft lights, and there she was. Admiral Ryan Calder. Older, but not enough to hide. Her hair was shorter now, silver around the edges. Her uniform pristine. She turned when they entered, expression calm, even curious. Can I help you? She asked. He stepped forward, her eyes locked on his. Her face froze. Then, you're supposed to be dead. He didn't blink. So were you, he said. For a moment, no one moved. Even the air stopped. Then Calder exhaled. I wondered when you'd come. I figured it might take longer. You didn't think I'd survive? I hoped, she admitted with a shrug. But no, not really. He nodded. At least you're honest. She gestured to the chairs. So, what happens now? You're coming with us, he said. You'll be put on trial before every surviving colony, every child who watched their parents burn, every human who had to scrape their home off the inside of a helmet. She laughed, bitter and sad. You still believe in trials, laws, courts? I believe in justice, he said. You owe the dead your voice. I gave them survival, she snapped. Do you know what the Coalition was planning? Total extinction. They would have sterilized the Earth system, removed every trace of humanity. I made a deal. One planet for the rest. One wound to prevent decimation. You gave them a target, he growled. You told them how to hit us so we couldn't hit back. I bought us time. You sold out everything." Silence again. She stared at him for a long moment. "You want to kill me?" "No," he said. "I want the galaxy to see your face when they remember what betrayal looks like." Suddenly, the lights shifted. An alarm blinked red above the door. Thorne's voice snapped through the comm. "Commander, we've been flagged. Security lockdown in 60 seconds. He stepped forward, grabbing Calder by the arm. "We're leaving. You can walk or we'll drag you." She didn't resist. "I was going to come either way. Might as well go loud." The escape was fast. Alarms screamed across the station. Doors sealed. Barriers fell. But they had planned for this. Thorne's team dropped smoke drones, overloaded power relays, and jammed coalition comms. The halls turned into chaos. In the confusion, the group slipped into a docking bay where the Scythe waited. They launched just as coalition cruisers powered up defense grids. Too late. The stealth runner vanished into the stars. Back aboard the Remnant's Vow, Calder sat in a containment room. No shackles, no torture. Just silence. He watched her through the screen. Arlen stepped beside him. "You did it." He didn't reply. Thorne appeared next, tossing a datapad onto the console. "We've got traffic. The Coalition's panicking. We broke one of their icons out of their most secure base. They're scared." "They should be," he muttered. Arlen frowned. "What about her?" He stared at Calder. She sat with perfect posture. No remorse. "She'll talk," he said. "And when she does, we'll tear their lies apart, piece by piece." "And if she doesn't?" Thorne asked. He looked at them both. "Then she'll be the last thing they see before they fall." The war room had been transformed into a tribunal. Not a court in the traditional sense. No robes, no ancient laws, no scripted neutrality. This was justice born of ash and silence, built in the vacuum where a government used to exist. It had no borders, no alliances, no official jurisdiction, just pain and survivors, and a hunger for truth. The commander stood before a broadcast rig hastily welded into the wall of the Remnant's Vow. Lights flickered. Antennas groaned as they transmitted across the shattered remnants of humanity, every surviving colony, every hidden ship, every desperate soul tuning in from the edge of extinction. "Transmissions live," Thorne said quietly. He stared into the camera. "My name no longer matters," he said. "What matters is that I was there. I saw Earth die. I heard the silence after the screams." The crew behind the camera said nothing. He held up the datapad containing the Solaris files. "We were betrayed, not just by the Altherian, not just by the Coalition, but by our own." He tapped the console. Behind him, a large screen lit up, and the face of Admiral Ryan Calder filled it. "This woman gave them the codes. She opened the gates. She signed Earth's death warrant and called it mercy." The screen shifted to the prisoner room. Calder sat calmly, hands in her lap, staring straight ahead. "She is alive," the commander said, "and today she will answer." He stepped away. The feed remained active. Calder's image stayed on every screen across the stars. And then the questions began. There was no jury, no attorneys, just voices. From every corner of the void, survivors patched in through low bandwidth, cracked signal relays. A man from the moons of Enceladus. "My daughter burned in New Osaka. She was 12. Why didn't you warn us?" "A mechanic from a derelict Martian rig. You told us to stand down. You told us we were protected. You lied." "A pilot from the Vega Freeborn. I watched the sky fall on my wedding day. I dug my wife out of a crater. She didn't have a face left." Each time, Calder sat in silence. Then, finally, she spoke. "I did what was necessary." The words sliced through the silence like a blade. "I had a choice," she said calmly. "Negotiate partial destruction or watch the Altherians sterilize the species. They promised one strike. Just Earth. If I cooperated..." Gasps came through the transmission lines. "You trusted them?" the commander said coldly. "I didn't trust anyone," she snapped. "I acted. You gave them the heart of our world. I gave you all a chance to scatter, to run, to hide. I gave humanity time." The commander clenched his fists. "We didn't need your sacrifice. We needed a fight. You stole that from us." "I saved more than you'll ever know," she said. "No," he replied, stepping toward the screen. "You saved yourself." Calder finally broke her gaze, looking down for the first time. "There was another deal, wasn't there?" he said. "That post on Nerelian. They let you live because you handed us over." She didn't answer. "You gave them our fleet positions, our defensive weaknesses. You helped them target cities where resistance would be slowest." Her silence was all the confirmation they needed. Across the stars, voices rose in outrage. The chat feeds exploded with fury, thousands watching. Tens of thousands. Calder's name trended across the last remnants of the Terranet. "I want her dead!" someone screamed through a connection from Europa. "Airlock her," another voice demanded. "She doesn't get to breathe while my son's buried under Europa ash." The commander held up a hand. "No," he said. "We are not what they think we are." He turned back to Calder. "You will not die today." A hush fell. Calder looked up, stunned. "You will live," the commander said. "You will live long enough to see what we become, to see humanity rise not because of you, but in spite of you." She laughed bitterly. "You think this is a rise? You're just animals now." "No," he said, voice low. "We've just stopped pretending to be guests in someone else's galaxy." He cut the feed. The transmission ended, but the message had already taken root. 3 days passed. Across dozens of systems, uprisings began. Human enclaves long kept under coalition rule burned their embassies. They stopped paying tributes. They took up arms. The remnants' vow had become more than a ship. It was a symbol. And symbols are dangerous. In the war room, Thorne dropped a report onto the console. 2 governors defected. 4 trade stations declared neutrality. Even the Dral Consortium pulled out of their Altherian agreement. They're scared. "They should be," the commander said. But Arlen stepped forward, face tense. "There's more," he said. "Something's spreading through the back channels. Leaks, videos, scream feeds from when Earth fell, not ours. Someone's broadcasting the whole thing, again." The commander narrowed his eyes. "Who?" "No idea," Arlen replied. "But they're calling themselves the Dustborn." He turned sharply. "That's one of our old ops phrases. Only our people would know that term." "Exactly," Arlen said. "Whoever they are, they were part of us. And now they're taking it public." Thorne looked up. "You think they're trying to recruit more?" "No," the commander said. "They're not recruiting. They're reminding." He walked to the map table. The red markers were spreading. But now green markers blinked too. Resistance cells. Sympathetic colonies. Secret arms caches activating after years of silence. The war was no longer a retaliation. It was becoming a revolution. "Find them," he said. "This Dustborn group. If they're with us, we coordinate. If not, we neutralize them before they spiral out of control." Thorne leaned closer. "You're worried they'll go too far?" "I'm worried they won't go far enough." That night, sleep was a myth. He stood alone on the outer observation deck, watching the stars drift in silence. Somewhere out there, Earth's ashes still floated. Somewhere out there, someone was building something without him. He touched the glass. Not in prayer, in memory. Behind him, the door hissed open. Thorne stepped in, quieter than usual. "You did the right thing," she said. "By letting her live?" She nodded. "She wanted to die." "You robbed her of that. That's better than any bullet." He nodded once, but she saw it. The weight behind his eyes, the exhaustion, the grief that kept rotting just beneath the rage. "You ever think it's too late for us?" he asked. Thorne stepped beside him. "All the time," she said. They stood in silence, no comfort, no promises, just two survivors, held together by the same gravity that shattered their world. Then, the comms buzzed. Arlen's voice came through, tight, urgent. "Commander, we've got something. A signal. It's them." He turned, instantly alert. "The Dustborn?" "Yeah," Arlen replied. "And they're asking for you." They met on a dead moon. Not a formal meeting, not an embassy or neutral ground, just an ancient mining husk drifting in the shadow of the fractured gas giant Elixis Fifirth. Long abandoned, long forgotten. A place built on survival and rot, with more corpses in its shafts than ore. The Dustborn had picked it for a reason. No security, no cameras, no broadcasts. The commander arrived with Thorne and a silent escort of 2 guards, both loyal, both ex-Marines turned insurgents after losing everything. None of them wore uniforms. They wore the war like second skin now, scarred, scorched, and unapologetic. The docking bay was pitch black, except for a single strobe light blinking in the far corner. A signal. A test. He walked straight into it. No hesitation. This wasn't arrogance. It was a message. "We're not afraid of shadows anymore." They passed through narrow corridors, steel walls stained with rust and oil. Signs of habitation were subtle. Discarded rations, heat readings in distant vents, silent drones tracking their every move. Finally, a voice crackled through a speaker embedded in the wall. "Stop." They obeyed. From the shadows ahead, 5 figures emerged. They wore no insignia, no rank. Their armor was mismatched, covered in graffiti, old war slogans, and the spray-painted names of lost cities: New Madrid, Port Clarity, Calypso Core. Their leader stepped forward. "You're real," he said. The commander nodded. "So are you." The man looked mid-40s, hard lines across his face, a missing eye covered by a plate of welded alloy. His voice carried a low, boiling hatred, not loud, but sharp. "I saw you on the trial broadcast. Called her." "She's alive," the commander said. "For now." The Dustborn leader nodded slowly. "That was brave." "No," the commander replied. "It was necessary." Silence settled between them. Then the leader stepped aside. "Come. There's someone else you need to meet." They led them through twisting stairwells and old tunnels until they reached a wide chamber, a command hub, long stripped and rebuilt from scrap. Screens covered the walls, flickering with ghost signals, intercepted transmissions, and archived coalition footage. And there, standing in front of it all, was a girl. No, not a girl, a woman. But young, maybe 23, maybe younger. Wearing a weathered tactical vest, her hair tied back, her eyes raw with exhaustion and defiance. She didn't salute, didn't speak, just stared at him like she already knew him. "You're the voice," he said. She nodded. "I am." "You've been spreading the scream feeds, Earth's final moments." "People need to see it," she said. "Not polished news cuts, not the diplomatic edits. The raw truth." The commander stepped forward carefully. "You're Dustborn?" She shrugged. "We didn't pick the name. It picked us." Thorne looked around. "You have a lot of followers." The girl didn't look at her. "We don't want followers," she said. "We want witnesses, And soldiers. The commander studied her face. There was pain there. Real pain. Not performative. Not political. This wasn't about glory. This was someone who'd lost something that couldn't be put into words. "Who did you lose?" he asked. She blinked, then said quietly, "Everyone." She walked to a nearby console and tapped it. A hologram lit up, a recording from Earth, time-stamped 12 hours before the orbital strike. A family, her family, sitting around a table, laughing over some forgotten meal. A mother, a brother, an uncle, a dog barking in the background. And her, younger, softer. He felt something twist in his gut. "I was off-world," she said. "Supply run, ship delays. I came back 2 days later, and there was nothing." The feed ended. She turned to him. "You said we weren't monsters, that we wouldn't become like them." "I meant it," he said. "But what if it's too late for that?" she asked. He frowned. She stepped closer. "You've seen what they've done, what they're still doing. You know they won't stop, not unless we erase them." "We're already fighting," Thorne said. "No," the girl snapped. "You're still targeted, still controlled. You're choosing your strikes. That's mercy they didn't show us." The Dustborn leader nodded in agreement. "We want full-scale retaliation. Not just their military, their trade centers, their culture hubs, their homes." The commander's jaw tightened. "You want to bomb civilians?" "They bombed ours," the girl shot back. "You think this war ends with a handshake? You think they'll ever see us as equals after what they did?" "I don't care how they see us," he said. "I care what we become." She stepped even closer, eyes burning. "We already became it, Commander. We became what we needed to survive. And now you want to tame it?" "I want to guide it." She shook her head. "Then you'll lose it." She turned away, tapping another panel. Dozens of red targets lit up across the galaxy. Not military installations, not convoys, cities, refugee colonies, cultural landmarks. They'd already marked them, already planned strikes. His blood went cold. "You haven't hit them yet," he said. "No," she said, "but we're close, and now you have a choice." He took a step forward. "You launch those strikes, and you'll be everything they say we are." "We already are," she whispered. "You just can't admit it." Back aboard the Remnant's Vow, the mood was heavy. He stood in the debrief chamber staring at the list of Dustborn targets. Each one would spread terror through the coalition, but they'd also kill thousands who had nothing to do with the war. Arlen leaned against the wall. "She's not wrong, you know. They started it. We finish it, not repeat it." Thorne crossed her arms. "Then what? Let them bomb us again in 50 years? Let another Calder rise and make a deal in the shadows?" "No," the commander said. "We strike their power, not their people." "You still believe in people, huh?" Thorne muttered. He looked up. "Yes, because if I stop, I become them." Silence. Then Arlen spoke quietly. "They said they'd wait 2 days. If we didn't support them, they'd go without us." He nodded. "Then we have 2 days." "To do what?" He stared at the screen. "To stop them." The next 40 hours were a blur. The commander ordered every signal trace analyzed, every Dustborn broadcast tracked, every ship movement mapped. He didn't sleep, didn't eat. The war had taken everything. Now it demanded his soul, too. Finally, they found it. The Dustborn flagship, a refitted freighter called the Vigil, hiding in the storm belt of the Sarenth Drift. Big enough to carry nukes, fast enough to strike hard and vanish. The commander stood on the bridge of the Remnant's Vow, eyes hard. "Intercept course," he ordered. "We stop this. Now." They found the Vigil as it began its final prep. The Dustborn fleet wasn't huge, only a dozen ships, most pieced together from wreckage, but they were ready to die. As the Vow entered the drift, comms flared. "Commander," the girl's voice echoed, "don't make us enemies. You made that choice when you targeted civilians. You think you're clean?" she snapped. "You burned Duraxis. You spaced diplomats." "Military targets. Collateral was regretted, not planned. You still live in rules. That's why we'll win." "You're not winning. You're becoming the next version of them." A pause, then maybe that's what it takes. He cut the feed and ordered the first volley. The Vigil was burning before it even opened fire. The Remnant's Vow struck fast, disabling her thrusters with precision shots, targeting systems, jamming communications, refusing to play into the full-scale war the Dustborn were trying to start. It wasn't mercy. It was a message. The Dustborn had loaded their warheads. They'd picked their targets: civilian cities, cultural sanctuaries, unaligned science colonies that had nothing to do with Earth's fall. They'd justified it by pain, by loss, by the idea that there were no innocents in a galaxy that stood by and watched Earth die. But the commander knew what they refused to admit. Once you accept the death of civilians as collateral, once you call slaughter a strategy, you don't become the savior. You become the next monster. The battle in the Sarenth Drift was chaos layered in silence. Thorn led the boarding team. He went with her. Not as a commander, not as a diplomat, as a man who had nothing left to lose except the last scraps of his soul. They stormed the Vigil's main hangar under thick magnetic shielding. Dustborn fighters engaged with desperation, not discipline. These weren't trained soldiers. They were survivors who had taught themselves to kill because no one else protected them. But the Vow's team was surgical. No wasted shots, no unnecessary kills. That mattered to him. They fought through the corridors like ghosts moving through the veins of a dying giant. Explosions rocked the walls. The ship moaned with pressure warnings. And at the heart of it all, in the bridge, she waited. The girl. The voice of the Dustborn. She didn't run, didn't even reach for a weapon, just stood in front of the command console, eyes glowing with something between fury and grief. "You shouldn't have come," she said. He stepped in, breathing heavy, armor scorched. A cut bleeding down his cheek. "You gave me no choice." She nodded slowly. "I never wanted to be your enemy," she said. "You spoke for us when no one else did. But then you flinched. You chose the moral road while the rest of us crawled through ash." "I chose humanity," he said. "You chose vengeance." "No," she snapped. "I chose memory. I remembered what they did, and I chose to make them feel it." She reached for a control on the panel. He raised his weapon. "Don't." Her hand paused over the trigger. "They need to know," she whispered. "They do know," he said. "They saw Earth burn. They heard our cries. But this, you think wiping out thousands of innocent lives will bring justice?" "It won't bring them back," she whispered. "But maybe it will stop the next betrayal." "You're wrong," he said. "This is how it starts again. With us." Silence. Then, for the first time, her voice cracked. "You don't get it. I had to watch the aftermath. I walked through the ruins. I picked up pieces of my mother's arm. Do you know what that smells like?" He lowered the gun, just slightly. "I do." Her lip trembled. "And you still think they deserve to live?" "No," he said. "I think we deserve to live, as more than weapons." She stared at him for a long time, then said, "They'll never respect us." "They don't have to," he said, "but they will fear what we stand for. If we destroy them for no reason, we become a threat. If we destroy their systems, their weapons, their lies, we become a force, and they'll never forget us again. She closed her eyes and stepped back from the console. He moved forward and deactivated the strike sequence. One button. That's all it would have taken to turn Earth's survivors into monsters. He turned to her. You'll answer for what you tried to do. She nodded. I know. They brought her back in restraints. Some dustborn fought to the end. Others surrendered. Some wept when they saw what nearly happened. The war wasn't over, but something deeper had been avoided. A line had not been crossed. Not that day. Weeks passed. The Remnant's vow became more than a warship. It became the base of the human coalition, a new, unaligned force of colonies and survivors who refused to belong to anyone else again. Not the Altharian, not the old Terran Council, not the ghosts of diplomacy. They were not begging anymore. They were building. Thorne sat at the war table, sorting through transmissions. New pledges coming in daily? Even non-human species. He raised a brow. She shrugged. Turns out even the coalition has defectors. They hated the extermination as much as we did. Good, he said. They'll need to learn to bleed with us if they want peace. She looked up. You think peace is possible again? He didn't answer right away. Then, not soon, not cheap, but yes. She nodded once. And the girl? She's in custody. Trial is scheduled. You going to speak at it? He thought about it. About the moment in the Vigil's bridge. About the pain in her voice. The desperation. The way grief had hardened into hatred, just like it almost had in him. I might, he said. Not to defend her, but to explain how we got this close. Thorne leaned back, watching him. You ever think about what you used to be? She asked. He looked at her. I remember. Every day. Do you miss it? He took a breath. No, I miss the illusion of it, but now I know what's real. She nodded. Outside, the stars blinked. Not quiet anymore, not passive. Now, when other species saw Earth's flag, scorched, redesigned, stitched from ruin, they didn't see weakness. They saw the price of betrayal. They saw humanity's wrath. But they also saw something else. Survival. Resilience. A race that had every reason to become monsters, and chose not to. That night, the commander returned to his quarters. He removed his armor slowly, let the silence settle around him, then walked to the small window that faced the void. There, floating beside the vow, was the scattered wreckage of the dustborn flagship. It hadn't been destroyed, just disassembled. Its parts were being used to build something new. Something better, reborn from the edge of horror. He reached into a drawer and pulled out an old photo. His brother. His mother. A sky in the background that no longer existed. He looked at it for a long time, then, finally, whispered, I kept the line, and for the first time in years, he let himself feel it. Not rage, not grief, just